Hello, my name is Scott Brevda. Today I'm going to share with you one of my favorite programs that we give at the museum at Eldridge Street. It's called Shapes, Colors, Patterns, and Light. In this program, we're going to take a look at those shapes, colors, and patterns that we can see both in the museum and in the outside world. Our museum is housed inside of a historic synagogue built over 132 years ago. At that time, the neighborhood was a very different place. As you see here, it was crowded, not just in the streets. It was also crowded in the tenement apartments in which people would live and people would work. In addition to the crowding and the lack of space, it was also a lack of light. Most rooms inside of a tenement didn't have a window, and those that didn't let much light inside. The colors, shapes, and patterns that families would have around them would often be obscured or invisible in the shadows, not noticeable by people looking around. In many ways, that's what made our building, the museum at Eldridge Street, so special. Inside the building is a massive sanctuary, over 70 feet tall, and there are over 60 windows that line the walls and even the ceilings. The windows would bring light in and would make this patterns, shapes, and colors jump out. It'd be noticeable. It makes the space glorious. As one of my colleagues always says, it makes the building look like a forest of shapes and colors. Today, we're going to take a look at those patterns, shapes, and colors, and we're going to start with colors. Believe it or not, the colors at the museum at Eldridge Street aren't too different than those colors that you and I have at home. They include red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. For me, whenever I think of these colors, I'm always thinking of the strong memories that I associate with them, that I connect with them. For red, I'm always thinking of the time the fire trucks, those bright red fire trucks ran by. For orange, I can't help but think of all those times in recess when I'd play basketball with my friends. For yellow, I think of bananas. Just when they're right to eat, the perfect yellow color. For leaves, I think of the summer, when I would go through the parks in New York City and all of those lovely dark green leaves brought some shade and some nice green to the area. For blue, I think of the sky. Sometimes there's clouds in it, sometimes there's not. One way or the other, the blue sky goes for miles. For purple, I think of grapes. What I love about grapes is that each grape almost looks like it has a different shade of purple. You can almost taste the difference. In our museum, we have those colors and many, many more. On the left-hand side, you see one of our wonderful stained glass windows. Now, stained glass windows are not like the windows you or I have at home. Rather than one single pane of glass, they're made up of many pieces of glass that each have a different color. Those pieces are brought together, almost like putting together a puzzle. On the window on your left, you can see all of the colors of that spectrum, from the blues and the purples around the edges to the reds, yellows, and oranges towards the center. On the right, you can also see some of the paint on the walls and ceilings of the museum. The various details, little paintings and designs, all use different colors in them. It's amazing how they were able to take those colors and bring them together into different designs. Just as I was saying, when we're using colors, we're not throwing them on the wall. We're taking them and putting them into form, then bringing them together. Those forms, we also call shapes. Our first shape that we're going to be looking at today is the circle. The circle is a very special shape. It's the only one we'll be seeing that doesn't have any corners. Instead, the circle is a single line in a continuous curve. My favorite part about the circle is that every part of the edge is the same distance to the center as all of the others. You may see circles everywhere around you. You might see them in clocks, as you see on the top left-hand side, or maybe the baseballs and basketballs you play with, as you see on the top right and bottom left. Or maybe you've seen tires on cars, trucks, or buses. My favorite circle has to be the donut, because I think I can actually see 3 circles in them, not just the outer circle, the inner circle of the hole in the donut, and the donut itself. 3 for the price of 1 sounds pretty good. In the museum, there are a lot of circles, and we see them most commonly in the stained glass. On the right, you see many different versions of circles. On the kinds of circles on the bottom, you see different circles, both overlapping and intertwining, almost like knots or chains or links. On the top, on those 2 more of a blue circles on the top of the window, you see bigger circles with smaller circles on top, different layers right next to each other. If you look on the top left, you can see a close-up of that window. I know when I look at it, I can count 7 different circles just in that one zoomed-in image. A lot of circles. On the bottom left-hand side are my favorite windows in the whole museum. I call them fallout windows because they remind me of the fallout shelter signs in my neighborhood. But one of my classmates once referred to it as a pizza because it's round, but the interior is divided up into those slice-like shapes. We actually have a word for those shapes. We call them triangles. And they're our next shape. A triangle has 3 sides and 3 angles. Now, some triangles have equal sides and 3 equal angles, like this one example on the screen. Others don't. In the outside world, you can also see a lot of circles. On the top left, you see the Hearst building in Manhattan. You can see all of those silver triangles that is part of the structure holding the building up. On the bottom left, you can see the coat hook, the hanger, the interior of which forms a triangle. In the center, we have a Dorito chips or other kinds of chips that form a triangle. Now, in the cooking, some of them might be a little curved or bent, but they're still triangles. On the right-hand side, we see my favorite example of a triangle. It is the ball at Times Square that drops every New Year's. While the overall shape of the ball is a sphere, which is a 3-dimensional shape, if you look closely, it's actually made up of many different triangles coming together. I think that's also very cool. At the museum, the triangles are not as common as some of our other shapes. In fact, you might even say they're hiding in plain sight. We had our earlier example of what I call the fallout window with those pizza-like slices in the middle. But if you look on your left-hand side, you'll also see a window, and there you have the Jewish star, 6-pointed star, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But if you look at the tips of that 6-pointed star, you can actually see orange triangles in between them. Again, hiding in plain sight. Our next shape is the square. Now, the square always has 4 equal sides and 4 equal angles, always at 90 degrees. In your own homes, you might see a lot of different examples of squares, whether they're the tiles on your floor or in your bathroom. They could be the pictures frames on your wall or the pictures themselves. Don't forget, the next time you get a pizza pie, don't just look at the circular pizza or the triangle slices. Look at the box. You'll see a square there too. In the museum, there are a lot of squares, really in the front of the room. If you look on the photo on your left-hand side, on the window on the far wall, if you look closely, you can actually see that window is made up of glass blocks, all in the shape of squares, one on top of the other. Just above that window on the ceiling, you can see the arched ceiling is made up of squares joined together. The photo on the right is a close-up of all of those squares with the floral patterns painted in them. I think it's beautiful. Our next shape is the rectangle, and the rectangle is actually related to the square. Like the square, a rectangle is made up of 4 sides. All the angles are the same, but unlike the square, only 2 of the sides are like each other. The other 2 are different. Imagine taking a square and stretching it out. Then you get a shape with 4 equal sides, 2 sides are equal, and the other 2 sides are equal. That's a rectangle. There are a lot of examples of rectangles as well. The screen you might be watching this video on may be a rectangle. So too is the TV on your left-hand side. On your top right-hand side, is is an image of bricks on the exterior of a building. They're rectangles too. And on the bottom right, the next time you go to buy some food or anything really, look at the cash you're using. Whether it's a $1 bill, a $20 bill, or even a $100 bill, they're all rectangles. Even credit cards are rectangles. In the museum, we have a lot of those rectangles too. On the left-hand side of your screen, you can see the image with the doors into the main sanctuary. Now, the doors themselves are rectangles, but so too are parts of the stained glass in them. If you look closely, those blue rectangular stained glass pieces, they're rectangles. And on the right, you can take a look at all of the rectangles in the carving. On the top left-hand side, it's carved into the wood. In the top center of the image, it's painted on. And just below that are our pews or benches. They're the seats that people would sit on. They're actually made of two different kinds of rectangles. There's the rectangle for the back and the rectangle for the seat. Those rectangular pews are very efficient. They hold a lot of people, but they aren't always the most comfortable place to sit. Our next shape is the hexagon. It has 6 sides and 6 angles. Like some of our other shapes, the lengths of the sides and the angles can vary, and they can be different. This hexagon has equal sides and equal angles. Some great examples of hexagons are also in some ways hiding in plain sight, and others you might see every day. The stop sign on the top left-hand side of your screen is something I see every day when I walk around. On the bottom left is the honeycomb that bees would make in their hive. On the top right are the nuts and bolts people use to build things. You may have used one as well. The shape of the heads are hexagons. And if you've ever used a colored pencil or pencil, just a regular pencil, look at the sides. It's not circular. Those pencils are hexagons too, as we can see. At the museum, I actually think the builders were very clever with how they put the hexagons in our space. They're located in the entranceway just before the main sanctuary. Now, if we look closely, we'll see that the tiles themselves are hexagons. They are 6-sided. But if we also look at how those tiles are laid out, we can see the builders used those 6-sided tiles to make a 6-sided shape. All of those white sections, they're hexagons. So too are the little brown roses with the yellow center. They're hexagons as well. Our last shape is a star. The star comes actually in 2 different forms. The first, on your left, has 5 points. The second kind of star on your right, we mentioned earlier. It's the 6-pointed star. It's also called the Star of David, or a Jewish star. One of my favorite parts is if you take a triangle, one right side up and the other upside down, and you move them on top of each other, you make a 6-sided star. In the world outside, you can see a lot of different stars. Whether on the top left, you're looking at the American flag, or on the top right, you're looking at Mickey Mouse's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, or if you're looking at a snowflake freshly fallen, as you do on the bottom. That's a 6-pointed star in real life. In our museum, the best place to see stars are on the ceilings. In all of the domes of our ceilings, we actually see both 5- and 6-pointed stars. The 6-pointed star is in the center, in the stained glass. The 5-pointed stars are around the edges. They're actually there with using gold leaf on top of the blue paint. So now that we have discussed the colors at the museum and the shapes those museums are put into, it's time to bring those together and make some patterns. A pattern is a repeated shape or design. They can be simple. As we see on the top, our first pattern is red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, and so on. They can also be complicated, with many colors. The example in the middle shows a pattern of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and so on. If we even want to be a little crazy, we can take colors and shapes and mix and match them to make patterns too. On the bottom, we see red square, blue triangle, yellow triangle, red square, blue triangle, yellow triangle. That's a pattern too. Now, a pattern will keep going until it ends. And the only way it ends is either you run out of pieces or you put in the wrong color in the pattern. Can you see where the pattern's broken here? That's right. It's the little orange rectangle on the right-hand side. That's broken up the pattern. It's no longer red, blue, red, blue. The pattern ends right there. In real life, there are many patterns, some more obvious than others. On the right-hand side, we see a zoomed-in leaf. The leaf's turned a little orange. And so what we see is a pattern of the leaf and its veins going from orange to green, orange to green. In the center is an example of a pattern hiding in plain sight. It's okay if you miss it. I have too. It hides in plain sight because the tiles are both the same shape, they're rectangles, and they're the same white color. What makes it a pattern is how the tiles are laid out. If you look, each layer is just slightly shifted from the one above and below it. That's a pattern. On your left-hand side is another great, famous example of a pattern. It's a white picket fence. And if you look closely, you'll see it alternates from having a picket to not having a picket, to having a picket to not having a picket. That alternation is also a pattern. That alternating is also a pattern. In the museum, patterns are everywhere. When they were painting and building the museum, they mixed and matched these colors and shapes in ways that made sense, and patterns just seemed to work. On the left-hand side, we see another example of stained glass. I can't tell you how much I love the stained glass, and the patterns are one of the reasons. There are 2 or 3 different patterns in that one window. If you look at the window as a whole, on the rectangular pieces on the bottom, you can see that the color design is slightly different. The one on the left, on the outermost, is yellow. The rectangle in the center has more of a bluish color. And then the one to the right of that is yellow as well. And so we get our first pattern, yellow, blue, yellow. If we look at the edge of the left-hand rectangle, we see another pattern as well, just on the far edge there. If you see the blue and red squares, along with the yellow pieces between them, that's our next pattern. We have blue, yellow piece, red, yellow piece, blue, yellow, red, yellow, and so on. If we get close and we look at all of those circles inside the rectangular pieces, we also see another pattern too. It's a lot more complicated. Another fun one are of the Jewish stars on the very top of the windows. If you look, they alternate between being yellow stars and a red star, as well as the hexagon in the center being red on the left, blue in the center, and red on the left again. Another pattern is found in the paint. If you look on the top right-hand side, inside the arches, you can see those alternating red and blue circles. They go up and down each and every arch. On the bottom right-hand photo as well, it's kind of dark, but if you look closely, you can see the alternating pattern of the stencil we put in, the brown paint. It's those little flowers, and every other flower is connected with the lines. And so you have a connected flower, unconnected flower, a connected flower, an unconnected flower. That too is a pattern. Now, when we have this program at our museum, we like to do some fun activities with it. And I'm going to show you one of those activities here. We're going to take a look at our collage. And to do this collage, all you're going to need are shapes. It can be any shapes. I've used circles, triangles, squares, and rectangles. They can be anything. And any combination of colors, I have here yellow, red, green, and blue. Again, the colors are up to you. And you can take these shapes and you can make them into different designs on your paper. Now mine got a little messed up here while I was moving it over, so I'll just reorder them again. Here on the top left, I've made a little train. On the bottom, I've made, with my shapes, a little bridge. And on the left-hand side, I've made a house with a green roof and a tree next to it. If you want to make these collages, all you're going to need is the paper, the colored pieces in colored paper cut into shapes, and a little glue stick to glue all the pieces down. The best part about this activity is that the only limit to it is your imagination. You can use whatever shapes you like in whatever combination you like to make almost anything you want. We also have a number of other activities surrounding shapes and colors that we're hosting on our website. I encourage you to go and take a look at those activities. They'll be available on our Learning from Home page at the museum at Eldridge Street. There you can use what you've learned here today about shapes, colors, and patterns to have all sorts of fun, whether you're hunting for shapes in your own home, coloring in stained glass windows by shapes, or even just trying to identify shapes in our facade. It's all up to you, all there to have fun. I hope you enjoy the activities, and I hope to see you sometime at the museum at Eldridge Street.